This moment lasted only a few seconds, but in it, I understood who I was, and who I never wanted to be again. My name is Ethan Cole. I used to think I was a decent guy, not perfect, but decent. I had a job in the city, a small apartment with thin walls, a phone that never stopped buzzing, and a calendar full of things that looked important: meetings, calls, deadlines, little victories that tasted like paper. I learned early how to smile and nod, how to talk fast, how to sound sure, even when I felt empty, and I got good at it. So good that people started to trust the version of me that I performed. My boss trusted it, my friends trusted it, even my mother trusted it, and the strange part is that I trusted it too. I told myself I was building a life, I told myself I was doing what I had to do, I told myself everyone cuts corners sometimes, everyone plays a role, everyone pushes a little. It is just the world, right? You either push or you get pushed, and that idea became my favorite excuse. It made me feel smart, it made me feel safe, it made me feel like the pressure I caused was not my fault. I was just part of the system, just one more cog with a clean shirt and tired eyes. I remember one morning in late fall, the air was cold and bright, the streets looked washed, and my breath made little clouds. I walked into the office lobby and saw my reflection in the glass, and I paused for half a second. I looked sharp, hair set, coat straight, jaw tight, eyes focused. I looked like a man with direction, and I felt proud. Then the elevator arrived, doors opened, and the moment passed. I did not know yet that another moment was waiting for me, a moment that would last only a few seconds, and still split my life into before and after. That day started like any other: coffee too hot, emails too many, people talking about plans, people laughing at jokes they did not mean, and me moving through it all like a swimmer in a crowded pool, always forward, never stopping. My coworker Madison Reed waved at me. She had kind eyes and quick hands. She said, "Big day, Ethan, you ready?" I said, "Always," and I meant it the way I always meant it, like a slogan, like a shield, because that day we were presenting to a client, a big one, a contract that could change our quarter, maybe our year, and I had worked the angles for weeks. I had pushed my team hard, I had trimmed the truth until it fit into a neat slide. Not a lie, I told myself, just the clean version, the version people want. I kept saying that, the clean version, and every time I said it, it felt less heavy, until it felt normal. And when something feels normal, you stop questioning it, you stop noticing the small costs, you stop hearing the quiet voice that asks, "Is this who you are?" The meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. I spent the morning rehearsing lines in my head. I answered calls, I sent messages, I corrected numbers, I sharpened phrases, and at noon I stepped outside for air. The wind cut through my coat, and the city sounded like metal in motion. I checked my phone. I saw a message from an unknown number, just 2 words, "Call me," no name, no context. I ignored it. I told myself it was spam. I told myself I had bigger things, that I would back upstairs, and I did not know that ignoring that message was the last easy choice I would make for a while, because the moment was coming. The moment that would show me my own face without the glass, without the performance, without the excuses. And when it arrived, it would be fast, quiet, and unforgettable. At 1:45 we gathered in the conference room, glass walls, long table, screen already glowing, the city visible behind it like a moving picture. My team sat down one by one, laptops open, cups half full, faces focused. I stood at the head of the table and felt that familiar rise in my chest, the quiet thrill of control. This was my space, my rhythm, my moment. I cracked a light joke, a few smiles appeared. Tension softened, exactly as planned. At 1:58 the clients walked in. 3 of them, suits darker than ours, expressions neutral, eyes sharp, the kind of people who listen more than they talk. I shook hands, steady grip, direct eye contact, names exchanged. Time felt thick, then we started. Slides moved smoothly, my voice was calm, confident, almost warm. I talked about growth, about opportunity, about alignment. I used words like sustainable and efficient and scalable, words that sound solid even when they float. I watched their faces, small nods, no objections. Good sign, very good sign. And then we reached the key slide, the one with the numbers I had adjusted just enough, not wrong, I told myself, just optimistic, just framed, and as I explained it I felt that quiet voice again, faint but present, like a knock from inside a wall. I ignored it, I smiled, I leaned slightly forward, and that is when it happened. The door at the back opened, soft click, barely a sound, but my eyes moved there without thinking. A man stepped in, late 40s maybe, gray jacket, tired posture. He looked out of place, confused, like he had taken a wrong turn. The clients turned their heads, my team froze for a second, and the man spoke, his voice calm, a little shaky. He said, "Sorry to interrupt, but I think you should hear this." My heart dropped, not fast, not dramatic, it sank slowly, like something heavy slipping out of your hands. I recognized him. His name was Daniel Brooks, former analyst. We had let him go 2 months earlier. Officially it was restructuring, officially it was budget, unofficially it was because he kept asking questions, too many questions, the wrong questions. I opened my mouth to speak, to stop this, to redirect, but Daniel kept going. He held up a folder, thin, worn, and said, "These projections are missing key risk factors, ones I documented, ones that were removed after I raised concerns." The room went silent, not awkward silent, serious silent, the kind that presses on your ears. I felt every eye turn toward me. Not accusing yet, just waiting. I could have said many things: security, mistake, misunderstanding, timing, but I did nothing, because in that moment, just a few seconds long, I saw myself from the outside, not the polished version, not the capable leader, but the man who chose convenience over clarity, image over honesty. I saw how easily I had pushed Daniel aside, how I had told myself it was necessary, how I had slept fine that night, and that realization hit harder than any word in the room. The clients stood up slowly. One of them said, "We will need time to review this. We will be in touch." No anger, no drama, just distance, which somehow felt worse. They left, the door closed, and the sound echoed. My team looked at me. Madison's eyes were wide, confused, hurt maybe. Daniel stood there, breathing heavy, not angry, just sad, and then he left too, and the room felt empty in a way glass walls cannot fix. No one spoke. I finally sat down, hands on the table, and I understood. Something simple and sharp. The moment had passed, just seconds, but it had shown me exactly who I was. And that was the first time I truly did not like the answer. The rest of that day moved strangely, like time had lost its grip. People packed their things, chairs rolled back, screens went dark, but I stayed where I was for a while, staring at the table, seeing reflections of faces that were no longer there. Eventually Madison came over. She hesitated, then asked if I was okay. I nodded too quickly, said yes, just tired. That word again, tired, the safest excuse in the world. She did not push, she never did, and that made it worse. I went back to my desk. Answered emails that did not matter anymore, typed words that felt hollow. Around 6 I left the office. The sky was already dark, city lights flickered on like nothing had happened, people laughed, taxis honked, life continued at full speed, and I felt completely out of sync. On the subway ride home I replayed those seconds over and over. Daniel's voice, the silence, the look in the client's eyes, not anger, just recalculation. I imagined how it looked from their side, a clean presentation, cracked by one honest interruption, and I realized how fragile my control really was, built on small omissions, on choices no one questioned until someone did. At my apartment I did not turn on the lights right away. I stood by the window, watched cars move below, thought about the message from the unknown number. Call me. I knew now it was Daniel. I knew I should have answered, should have listened, should have slowed down, but I did not, because slowing down meant looking too closely, and I had spent years avoiding that. My phone buzzed again, this time a name appeared, Daniel Brooks. I stared at it until the screen dimmed, then buzzed again. I answered. My voice was quiet. He did not accuse me, did not raise his voice, he just said he tried to warn me, said the numbers could hurt people later, not today, not tomorrow, but eventually, and he could not be part of that. I said I was sorry. The word felt thin. He paused, then said something that stayed with me. He said, "Sorry is easy when the damage is still invisible." Then he wished me well and hung up. That night I did not sleep, not because of panic, but because of clarity, a sharp kind. I thought about all the times I had justified myself, all the times I had said everyone does it, this is how it works, you have to play the game, and I realized how dangerous that phrase is, the game, because games make consequences feel unreal, like points instead of people. I saw how I had trained myself not to feel the weight of my choices, how success had become a filter that softened everything ugly, and once that filter cracked, everything rushed in. Sometime near morning I made coffee I did not drink, sat on the edge of my bed, and admitted something out loud, just to myself. I had become someone I would not trust, and that admission hurt more than the lost contract, more than the awkward silence, because contracts can be replaced, reputations repaired, but character, that takes longer, and for the first time in years. I asked a question without trying to dodge it. If this moment lasted only seconds, why did it feel like it rewrote my entire life? And maybe the answer was simple, because seconds are enough, when they are honest. The next morning I went to work earlier than usual, not because I was motivated, but because staying home felt impossible. The office was quiet, lights dim, air cool. I liked it that way, no eyes, no expectations, just space to think. I opened my laptop and stared at my inbox, messages from leadership, polite, neutral, asking to regroup, asking for explanations, nothing aggressive yet, but the shift was there. Subtle, real, trust does not break loudly, it thins, thread by thread. I walked to the window and watched the city wake up, people moving with purpose, unaware of my small internal collapse, and that contrast felt strange, like I had stepped out of sync with the world. Madison arrived a little after 8. She stopped when she saw me, said she did not expect anyone so early. I shrugged. She sat across from me, quiet for a moment, then said yesterday was rough. I nodded. She asked if Daniel was right. I did not answer immediately. That pause said more than words. She looked down, then said she had trusted me, not angrily, just honestly, and that hurt in a clean way, the kind that does not wound but exposes. After she left, I made a decision that surprised even me. I opened the original files, all of them, every version, every note Daniel had written, every risk we had trimmed away. I read slowly, carefully, and the picture became clear, not catastrophic, but real. Real enough that hiding it felt wrong, not strategic wrong, human wrong. By noon I requested a meeting with leadership, not to defend myself, not to spin, but to explain. The full version, the unclean one. Sitting in that room again felt different, smaller. I spoke slower. I admitted where I had pushed too far, where I had chosen ease over accuracy. I did not blame pressure or culture or expectations, I just owned it. The silence afterward was heavy, but not hostile. Finally someone said, "This will have consequences." I said I understand, and I meant it. Walking out I felt lighter, not relieved, just aligned, like my insides had stopped arguing. Later that day I sent a message to Daniel, a simple one: "You were right, thank you for standing up." No response came, and that was fair. Change does not earn instant forgiveness. I knew that. What surprised me was that I did not feel the urge to chase approval anymore. Something in me had shifted. The need to look good had lost its grip, replaced by a quieter goal, to be solid, even if that meant being less impressive. That evening I walked home instead of taking the subway. The air was cold again, familiar, my breath made small clouds like before, and I remembered my reflection in the lobby glass days earlier, sharp, confident, controlled. I wondered what that version would think of me now, slower, uncertain, honest, and for the first time the answer did not scare me, because I was no longer asking who I appear to be, I was asking who I choose to become, and that choice felt open, unfinished, real. The consequences arrived quietly over the next weeks. No dramatic scenes, no raised voices, just changes, responsibilities reassigned, projects moved away from my desk, fewer meetings where my opinion mattered. I accepted it without protest, not as punishment, but as balance. Something inside me understood that trust returns slower than it leaves, and that was fair. I spent more time listening than talking, more time checking than assuming, and in that slower pace I noticed things I had ignored before. How often people hesitate before speaking, how many good ideas die because they feel inconvenient, how silence can mean fear and not agreement. Madison started stopping by again, asking questions, not for approval, but for clarity. Our conversations became simpler, more honest, less polished, and somehow stronger. One afternoon she told me she stayed because she wanted to work somewhere real, not just successful. That word stayed with me, real. I began mentoring a junior analyst named Lucas Hale, sharp, ambitious, reminded me of myself years ago. I caught myself wanting to teach him shortcuts, then stopped. Instead I taught him how to question numbers, how to slow down when something feels too clean, how to speak up early before silence becomes habit. He listened, asked thoughtful questions, and I felt a strange sense of responsibility, not for results, but for direction. Outside of work my life also shifted. I stopped filling every hour, stopped chasing noise. Evenings became walks, cooking simple meals, calling my mother and actually listening. She said I sounded different, calmer. I did not explain. Some changes are better felt than described. One night I received an email from Daniel, short, polite. He said he appreciated the message, said he had found a position elsewhere, somewhere smaller, more careful. He wished me luck. I read it twice, not looking for closure, just acknowledgement, and that was enough. Months later the client returned, cautiously, with more questions, tougher terms, but honest ones. This time the presentation was heavier, less shiny, full of caveats and risks, and when I spoke I felt steady, not confident, not nervous, just grounded. They did not sign that day, but they did later, slower, cleaner, and when the deal closed no one applauded, no champagne, just quiet nods, and I realized that was my new measure, not applause, but alignment, not speed, but direction. And sometimes I still think about that moment, those few seconds, the door opening, the silence, the truth entering the room uninvited, and I understand now it was not an interruption, it was an invitation, to step out of the role I was playing, and into the person I could still choose to be. Time kept moving, seasons changed, the city shifted colors, but that moment stayed sharp in my memory, not as regret, but as a marker, a line I could not cross back over. I noticed how often people search for a single event to blame or praise, but change rarely works that way. It grows quietly, choice by choice. I started turning down projects that asked for speed over sense, not loudly, not heroically, just calmly. Some people respected it, some were confused, a few were annoyed, and I learned that clarity does not need agreement to be valid. Leadership eventually brought me back into bigger rooms, not because I pushed, but because consistency is hard to ignore. I spoke less, but when I did, people listened, not because of authority, but because they knew I would not hide the uncomfortable parts. Lucas progressed quickly, he made mistakes, admitted them, learned fast, and watching that felt more rewarding than closing any deal. One evening after work he asked why I had changed. The question caught me off guard. I said because I saw myself clearly once, and did not like the reflection. He nodded, said he hoped to have that clarity without the fall. I smiled, said the fall is optional, the moment is not. It comes for everyone, you just have to notice it. Outside the office my world felt quieter, friendships shifted, some faded when I stopped performing, others deepened when I stopped pretending. I learned how much of connection is built on shared honesty rather than shared success. I started writing, not for work, not for anyone else, just notes, thoughts, questions, pages no one would read, and in those pages I traced the shape of my old excuses, saw how convincing they had been, how fragile they really were. One afternoon I ran into Daniel on the street, completely by chance, a crosswalk, red light, familiar face, he looked healthier, lighter, we nodded, exchanged a few words, no tension, no history pressing between us. Before we parted he said something simple. He said moments pass fast, but they echo, make sure yours echoes forward. I thanked him, and as I walked away I realized something important. The moment did not make me better, it made me aware, and awareness is work, daily, uncomfortable, necessary. There are still days I want the old ease, the clean slides, the smooth answers, the applause, but now I know the cost, and I know who pays it, and that knowledge keeps me steady, not perfect, just awake, and maybe that is enough. Years from now people may forget the deal, the presentation, even the names, but I will remember the feeling, the shift inside my chest when I realized the story I told about myself was incomplete, and incomplete stories are dangerous, because we live inside them. I began paying attention to those stories and others too, how often we soften our edges to fit, how often we trade honesty for approval, not because we are bad, but because we are afraid of slowing down, afraid of standing out. Afraid of being seen clearly. I saw it in meetings, in friendships, in myself, and instead of judging it I learned to pause, to ask better questions, to leave space. Sometimes that space was all someone needed to speak the truth. Madison eventually took a leadership role, she led differently, openly, asked for feedback without armor, and watching her confirmed what I was learning. Strength does not need hardness, it needs direction. Lucas left to start his own small firm. He sent me a note saying he wanted to build something careful, something he could explain without shrinking. I smiled at that, knowing the echo continued. My own career never returned to its old trajectory, but it found a better one, slower, steadier, one that let me sleep at night, and sleep became a strange symbol of success, the ability to rest without rehearsing defenses. I stopped measuring days by outcomes and started measuring them by alignment. Did my actions match my values? Did my words match my intent? Did I listen when silence asked me to, and on days they did not? I noticed, corrected, moved forward, no drama, no self-punishment, just course correction. The moment itself faded in detail, but not in meaning. I no longer saw it as exposure, but as clarity, a brief window where excuses could not hide, and in that window I met myself honestly, not the version on the glass, not the version on the slide, but the one behind them, and I understood something simple and lasting: we do not change because we are forced, we change because we finally see ourselves without distortion, and once you see clearly, going back becomes impossible, not because you are better, but because you are awake, and being awake carries responsibility, quiet, constant, unavoidable, but also freeing, because you are no longer running from who you are walking with it. As time passed I stopped waiting for big moments. I learned they rarely announce themselves, they slip in quietly, disguised as small choices, a sentence you soften, a truth you delay, a silence you allow, and I learned that every one of them adds up, not immediately, but inevitably. I began treating ordinary days with more care, not urgency, care, how I spoke to people who could not offer me anything, how I reacted when no one was watching, how I explained decisions when the easy version was right there, tempting. I noticed how peace feels different from comfort. Comfort numbs, peace steadies, and I chose steadiness more often, not always, but enough to feel the difference. There were setbacks, moments when I slipped into old habits, talked faster than I thought, pushed before listening, but now I caught it early, apologized quickly, adjusted openly, and the world did not end. In fact, trust grew stronger in those moments, because honesty after a mistake builds more than perfection ever could. I began sharing my story carefully, not as a warning, not as a badge, but as context, and I watched how it gave others permission to speak, to admit doubts, to question momentum, and I realized how rare that permission is, how hungry people are for it. One afternoon during a quiet meeting someone asked why we were slowing a project that could move faster. I answered simply, because speed hides problems and I would rather face them now. No one argued, the room relaxed. Clarity has a calming effect. Later that day I walked past the same lobby where I once admired my reflection. I glanced at the glass again, saw someone older, lines around the eyes, posture less rigid, gaze steadier, and I felt no urge to impress him. That felt like progress. The city outside kept racing, chasing the next thing, but I was no longer trying to match its pace. I had found my own, guided not by pressure, but by awareness, and I understood that the moment was never about what I lost, it was about what I stopped losing every day after, myself. Sometimes I wonder who I would be if that door had never opened, if Daniel had stayed silent, if the moment had passed unnoticed, and the answer is always the same: I would still be moving fast, still explaining away discomfort, still mistaking momentum for meaning, and that thought keeps me grateful, not for the tension, but for the truth it delivered. I learned that integrity is not loud, it does not announce itself. It shows up in repetition, in the same choice made again and again when no what is counting, when no reward is promised. I learned that leadership is not about direction alone, but about example, about what you allow, what you question, what you correct. I saw how my calm gave others permission to slow down, how my honesty reduced fear in rooms where fear had lived quietly for years, and that felt like real impact, not measurable, but durable. One day my mother visited the city, we walked, talked, shared a simple meal. She looked at me for a long moment and said she felt proud, not because of my job, but because I seemed at peace. That mattered more than any title. I stopped chasing the version of success that needs defending. I chose the one that can sit quietly without explanation. There are still hard days, moments of doubt, choices without clear answers, but now I meet them differently, not with armor, but with attention, and attention changes everything. It turns fear into information, pressure into signal, silence into invitation. The moment taught me that seconds are enough to reveal a lifetime of patterns, but days are enough to change them, slowly, deliberately, honestly, and that change does not erase the past, it integrates it, makes it useful, makes it meaningful. I no longer wish the moment away, I carry it with me, not as weight, but as compass, reminding me where not to return, and where to keep going. Looking back now, the moment feels almost small, a few seconds, a door opening, a voice-breaking routine, but I know better. Small moments carry heavy truths. They arrive without warning and leave without ceremony, but they stay. They ask something of you, not immediately, not loudly, just persistently. Who are you when the story breaks? Who are you when the mirror stops flattering? For a long time I thought change required force, loss, pain, but it does not. It requires honesty, and honesty is simple, not easy, but simple. It asks you to stop pretending you do not see what you see. That day I saw myself clearly, not as a villain, not as a hero, just as a man making choices and avoiding their weight, and one scene that could not be unseen. The moment did not destroy my life, it corrected its direction. It took away speed and gave me depth, took away noise and gave me meaning. Today my days are quieter, my decisions slower, my words fewer, but each one carries more truth. I no longer chase the feeling of being impressive, I choose the feeling of being aligned, and when I stand still long enough I can feel it, that quiet certainty, that I am not perfect, not finished, but honest, and that honesty guides me better than ambition ever did. The moment lasted only a few seconds, but in it I understood who I was, and who I no longer wanted to be, and from that understanding everything else followed. Not all at once, not dramatically, but steadily, choice by choice, day by day, and that is how real change happens, not in noise, not in applause, but in silence, in clarity, in the courage to stay awake.